to the Belknap County Republican Committee meeting this evening. Just for your information, it's April 13th, in case any of you didn't know that. I think everybody should have gotten an agenda, and we also have name tags for those of you who don't already have name tags of your own that came from the legislature or from the Sheriff's Department or anything like that. We also have a sign-in sheet that should be going around. If you haven't signed in, I'd appreciate it if you would. That way we know who to go back to when we contact the state police for any kind of an investigation. Okay. All right, enough of that. I think we need to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and gosh, we've got Sheriff Craig Wiggin here. I think maybe we'll have him give us the lead here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, I hear we have a calliope coming through now. That's very nice. Okay, we're gonna divert a little bit away from our normal order of things because Jim Forsythe, State Senator Jim Forsythe, is with us here this evening. He's got a semi-tight schedule. He does have to leave here at some point, probably shortly after 7 o'clock. And I prefer to give him the opportunity to speak so that he doesn't feel rushed and then have to tear out of here. So we're going to start with him, and then we'll go into the Secretary's report and the Treasurer's report. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Jim, and if you'd like to come up here and just address everyone from here.
All right, I don't want to take up much time from the speaker. So, plus about half of you maybe heard me at Barnstead Alton anyway. I handed out some Senate highlights. Anybody not get one that wants one? So this highlights all the stuff that we've done during the first half of the session, which is once we got all the bills out into the House. Now we've gotten all the House bills over and have been hearing them, and we also have the budget, which is obviously fairly controversial at this point. The Senate stance on the budget is that we want to maintain what the House did in terms of the overall number because the revenue estimates are probably pretty good. The Senate will have their own revenue estimates at some point with more up-to-date information. But the budget figures will probably likely stay pretty similar, but the House had some good ideas on cuts, the governor had some good ideas on cuts, and the Senate's going to want to add their ideas. That way maybe some of the other cuts can be restored if we can cut in other areas. One of the things that was really impressive what the House did is they restored a lot of the downshifting, or not restored downshifting, that would not be good. They eliminated a lot of the downshifting that was in the governor's budget. For example, school building aid came back to fully fund existing projects, whereas it had been cut from $50 million down to $20 million, and catastrophic aid for the schools for special ed was restored to near 2011 levels. So even though there was a lot of cuts, at the same time they were restoring money to the local property taxpayers. There's still some questions about pensions. The governor cut from 25% down to 0 on the state's contribution to pensions. The House argued that because of the increased employer contributions and then some money they set aside, that it would still be no downshift. There's some questions about those numbers. We're going to be looking at that and trying to make sure there's no downshift on retirement as well. So that's the plan for the budget. It's we've got another month to get it done, and people are working hard on that. And other than that, I just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions. There's a lot of stuff we did in the first half of the session. So if you had questions on what was going on, rather than me get up and go over all those points, fire away.
No questions about the bills? Nobody has any questions about the budget? Here we go.
On 156, on the registration, I'm getting an awful lot of heat from the local tax collectors and the towns about that.
Right.
You understand who passed it, or is it in committee?
Well, we passed it.
House, yeah.
I don't know what the status in the House is.
We're hearing it next week.
I believe it's Tuesday.
Okay, so you haven't had the hearing yet. My office mate is Senator Sanborn. He's the prime sponsor, and he has worked incredibly hard to get input from the towns to try to address all their concerns. And because of that, the town administrators, what do we call it? Association came out with a neutral stance on it, whereas they had been opposed to it. So, I mean, some of the concerns are verification of residency. Some things that the auto dealers, because they're generally giving out a loan, they're doing a credit check. So that's a check that hasn't been in there before on residency, an actual credit check. And then they also, Senator Sanborn added in there that residents have to, or the person buying the car has to do a affidavit saying that, you know, they are a resident of that town. So you can go after them for fraud if they do that. And then the names are all still coming to the town clerks, so they can also still check for residency and then file a complaint if it's wrong.
There's also, the question was brought up is, it is a tax, and somebody else is collecting a tax, which is a violation of the Constitution. That's what I'm getting. In other words, if they're collecting the registration as part of a tax
Right.
program, and that's a violation of the Constitution.
Which section of the
Because
Constitution?
nobody can collect taxes except the town or the officials. Now, I'm just
Or
relaying
designated, my understanding is or designated agent in the EVR, and the vendor is a designated agent.
They already went that route on boat registrations. I mean, and the money didn't come back to the towns. And that's,
Well,
Yeah,
that's one of the
big fear.
Yeah,
Right.
Senator Sanborn was at the city council meeting in Laconia. He got an earful from
yeah.
He voted against it too.
And
Yeah, you know,
Voted down 5-0.
Yeah, what's funny about that is then I asked about the Hewitt Technical Center, if it's still in the capital budget. He's the vice chair of the capital budget committee, so anyway.
But also, some of
And it
the
is
towns are
still-
gonna have to upgrade their computers. There'll be a cost for, like a town like we represent Sampson, until the cost of the towns to upgrade right away to get on board, and that's gonna come from somebody for a cost.
I don't think they have to upgrade their computer system. They can have paper checks mailed if they prefer to have
Well,
paper checks.
The thing is there's gonna be a timely manner for them to get their money, so they know how to budget. That's another big issue, is the budgeting process for them.
Yeah.
Is how much they can budget, and there's some problems with this. We've had problems in the past with that.
So the other thing you brought up about the revenue, like with boat registration getting taken by the state, the state, to my understanding, always was getting a portion of that, and we're the ones collecting it. In this case, for the EVR, it's going from the EVR to the town. It's not going through state hands. I wouldn't have supported if it went through state hands, because you're right. I think the state will take a larger part.
Hey, this is just what I'm getting
Right.
on it from the different towns. The other question is, how much are they adding on to that for processing? In other words, how much are the dealers
Yes.
adding to that fee for their processing?
So there's an additional fee on there. Now, keep in mind, you don't have to do this when you buy your car. You can still take it and go register at the town clerks. So it's not a mandatory fee. The fees for the towns are the same. There's an additional fee that's probably going to be around $10 or $15 to pay for the vendor. Of that, $2 goes to the town clerks, which is money they weren't getting before. Other than that, all the same money still comes to the town, so they're getting an additional $2.
But how fast are they gonna get that money? Is a dealer gonna say, well, we might send it in 6 months, we get a whole bunch,
No.
or?
Yeah, they're going to get it. They get it faster than currently, because right now you have 30 days to register your car. If you register at the time there, if you're getting the money electronically,
The town, you get it immediately.
right? But you have 30 days from buying your car to register. So it could be up to 30 days before you get the money. Whereas if they register at the time of the purchase, I think it's within a week if you get the electronic transaction that the town gets the money. If you get a paper check, I think it's once every week or every other week for a paper check. So it actually, you get the money quicker. That's one of the.
And how is the dealer gonna know if somebody goes over and says, what residence? Maybe
What?
somebody lives in
Right.
another town, can go over here and register in some other town.
Right,
We
so
don't know that.
there's the driver's license, which isn't always updated, there's the affidavit, there's the credit check, and then there's the fact that the towns are still getting the names to double check them as well.
I think we're gonna have a problem with the background check. You don't have to have a background check to live in a town.
Okay.
Right, don't
And if you're,
register a car.
if you choose to register your car because you're buying it, and they say, well, we're gonna do a background check on you, and then all that information is then
You're
transferred.
talking about credit check?
Credit check, you need a
Right.
credit check to live in town. And if they forward that information to the town clerk.
No. I'm just saying that as part of the credit check process, they're gonna get the credit history, and if that conflicts with the residency, then they'll know about that. And that's not a check the towns can do. And they're not sending that information to the towns. That's,
40 states do this currently, I believe.
yeah, there's a lot of states, Massachusetts does it.
We're not Massachusetts.
I know we're not Massachusetts. But it's a difficult issue because the town clerks always, of course, have a problem with it. There is suspicion about the money. But at the same time, it helps the auto dealers out. We've got a lot of auto dealers in this district. Yeah, ironically, I'm helping out my ex-Senate opponent by supporting this. He's an auto dealer.
No, his dad.
Right.
Well, and his wife, yeah.
Yeah, it should be all.
And for consumers, it's more convenient. So.
In a small state like New Hampshire, what's more convenient about it? We're not in California. where
If I can.
Because you can register.
Do it, I'll do it.
You can do it at the time you register your
we-
car.
Well, I appreciate you want if you want it.
Yeah,
If
you
you
don't have to
finance
do
your
it.
car,
Choice.
as it is right now, you have to come up with that. I mean, I just bought a new pickup, and I think it was $700, $800 to register. I had to come up with that money. Some people can't buy a new car because they can't come up with that registration fee. Now it can be rolled into the finance contract as well.
Yeah.
So it's going to help stimulate the economy and sell more cars.
Yeah. So other questions?
Just one other very controversial
Oh, no.
thing. 27.
Yes.
This, I have had more people for and against the speed limit on the lake. They could care less about the budget. You know, $1 billion is nothing, but 10 miles an hour is critical.
Right.
Any thoughts on that?
Do whatever you want to. Anymore. No, I mean, I did support that compromise. The original bill came in saying essentially what's reasonable and prudent, which actually the legislation already says reasonable and prudent, but they basically removed the speed limits. Philosophically, I was okay with that, but after getting feedback from the district, I, decided that that was not okay, but I did support the 10-mile-an-hour bump up in the Broads. There are fast fishermen, to get around the lake, that really helps them out a lot, to do competitions and to do fishing, and then, jet skis as well. So 55 gets those guys. It doesn't bump it up high enough for the people like the fast boaters who have the cigarette boats. And Department of Safety said it was enforceable. And for me, even though it may be a minority of people that own those boats, for me it was important, unless there's a proven safety issue against letting them do that at 55 in the Broads, that I felt I had to support it, even though it was probably unpopular in this district. So, but yes, it's your problem. But you're right, it's been more emails, more calls than the budget, than anything else.
That's kind of funny that you said that Department of Safety said, or whatever, they can enforce it or work with it. When we had that bill before, oh, we don't have enough help, we only have so many, and we can't get out in the lake, we can't watch this, now all of a sudden you're saying there's plenty of help?
Well, in the sense of defining and distinguishing the region through the buoys, that portion is doable. Whether or not they still have, it depends on whether they get rated again, I think.
Was that R-A-T-E-D or R-A-I-D-E-D?
Two bills. Did the Senate vote on the right to work bill today? I know that it passed through committee 4-1.
Right.
And then the other one was HB 542, the parental consent or conscientious objection to content in schools. Do you know how that's faring right now?
Yes. So right to work will be voted on next Wednesday. So it should pass. Whether it passes by a veto majority or not, I don't know. So yeah, that's coming up next week. The committee did pull the amendment that the House put in there out of that to restore it back to the original right to work bill, as opposed to one that the amendment was for public sector unions. They didn't have to represent the non-union employees, or they didn't represent the non-union employees, because that was the argument against right to work was, if we have to represent these people because they're an exclusive bargaining unit, then they should have to pay the agency fees. So the House made an amendment that said, okay, you don't have to represent them anymore, or you don't represent them anymore. Based on feedback, I think, from a lot of the unions, they basically like that even less. So the Commerce Committee took that amendment out. I don't know whether the Senate will uphold that or not, but that's what happened. On 542, the parental rights bill, that was one I was the lone vote at the Education Committee for it. There was concerns about language of it and what it did. I wanted time to address those concerns, but they voted inexpedient to legislate. So this is a bill that says you can't be compelled to send your kid to a school or a program or a course that you're conscientiously objected to. So there was concerns about, does this eliminate compulsory education? So we put an amendment that said, no, it doesn't eliminate that. If you choose to not send your kid to a particular school, you've got to choose another school or homeschool. If you choose to pull your kid out of a program, does that mean that the district has to provide an alternative program? So we wrote an amendment that said, no, it doesn't require the district to provide an alternative, because that's an unfunded mandate down in the towns. And if a parent does another course to replace it, does the school have to accept credit? And we wrote an amendment that said no. But there was concerns about the language. We pushed it. We got enough support, but probably not enough support to pass it. But so instead of voting to kill it, they agreed to vote to table it so we can continue to look at it either this year or next year. So it is still alive either for this year or next year.
Jim, on the, just going back to the right to work one, you said the amendment was removed, so does the...
Or the committee recommended that the amendment be removed.
Okay.
Yes.
With that if that amendment were to be removed, does that mean that essentially that people would not have to necessarily join a union, but they would be represented by the union as far as negotiations, or?
That's the way it currently stands, is you don't have to join a union, but if you don't, we're talking public sector here for this
Yes.
portion. If you don't join the union, they still represent you. You don't have a choice in that. And then they may collect agency fees from you. So the right to work bill says they can't collect agency fees from you.
I see. Okay, well.
And the not collecting agency fees is both for public sector and private sector, but private sector, when you set it up, you can either choose to be an exclusive bargaining unit or not.
Sure.
Whereas for public sector, you are the exclusive bargaining unit.
All right. I mean, I personally, I would have thought that if in the public sector, if somebody chose not to be in the union, then they would also be giving up any of the things that go with the union. In other words, the negotiation would be for the union members, and the non-union people would figure stuff out on their own with the employer.
Right, and that's what the amendment would have done.
Yeah. Seems to make sense to me. I mean, you get what you pay for.
I think that's more
Or what you don't pay
consistent,
for.
but the thing is there is big advantage to being the exclusive bargaining unit.
Because it's more numbers and they've got everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
At the same time, you can make an argument that it can be a disadvantage to be represented by somebody that you don't want to be represented by as well,
Mhm.
because you may be able to negotiate a higher salary
Right.
if you put in a lot of work, you're really good, you've been there a long time.
Well, that brings
And
to mind
so-
a different question, though, Jim. Does that mean that theoretically a union could bargain for an agreement that says, for those people who are union members, we're going to have these provisions, and for those who are not union members but who are negotiating for, we're going to give them other provisions?
No, I don't think so.
But is
I
there
don't
anything
think so.
excluding that from it?
I just have never heard of that happening.
Yeah.
And I think that wouldn't really work, because then they'd hose everybody and force everybody in the union. That hasn't happened, so I don't think that exists.
Okay.
I think the union has to,
Be fair with everybody. Yeah.
I mean, they could set a different salary for an art teacher versus a science teacher, I think, but I don't think they can discriminate based on
Okay.
status.
It's nothing to do with state employees, right? The State Employee Association, the union, that union, or does it?
It would affect the
Yeah.
State
It will?
Employees Association.
They collect agency fees.
Right,
Yeah, they do collect agency fees.
absolutely,
And-
and some of them, they take 1 hour 1 hour wage, you know, with the 1 hour.
So if you're non-union,
That's
you would
right,
no longer have to
take
pay
it, yeah.
that. I know, like my town, that the teachers' union does not collect the agency fee, which I thought was great. You know, they choose not to. They can, but they choose not to.
The employee doesn't have the option to opt out of the negotiations individually?
No.
Is that, see, the problem there is that a teachers' union, for example, you have good teachers, we all know them, we have bad teachers.
Right.
And when you lump everybody into a collective, all you have is mediocre teachers, and the good teachers are really getting knocked down what they could have.
I would love to see merit pay for teachers, and actually, you know, the amendment to right to work would have kind of allowed that if you were not in the union. You know, they could have paid some teachers more, some teachers less. At least the ones that are not in the union. The union can negotiate for merit pay. You can have merit pay within a unionized system. They just have always opposed that. We did do. Actually, I did a teacher tenure reform. So it takes the teacher tenure from 3 years to 5 years, so you have to be in 5 years before you collect tenure. And
I think they should eliminate tenure altogether.
well, the way we did it was the portions of tenure that are on there are the superintendent has to prove beyond the preponderance of evidence, you know, that you're a non-performing teacher. We removed that, so it's just normal burden of proof. And then the other portion was, you know, you have to demonstrate that you've, you know, tried to work with them, et cetera, and so forth. You have to have a history of spending a lot of time to try to remediate. That portion's been eliminated. The portion of tenure that's retained is, and this makes sense actually, is if you're non-renewed, then you can appeal to the school board, and that makes sense. And then for any decision that the school board makes in general, you can also appeal to the Department of Education. The appeal in that case is only based on whether or not the board made an accurate decision, not whether you agree with them or not. So there is still due process there, but it's toned down quite a bit.
Yeah, I want to get back to the right to work bill. In 1991, it was the same argument as it is today. When I was there, the right to work, they brought up the same argument, and it's funny that you took out the amendment. Their argument was these people don't have to pay dues, which they don't say that they pay a fee. They just say, but yet we have to defend them. Okay, if they lose their job or a grievance, and it's not fair. That I heard in 1991. I got calls on this when it started way back this year, and it was the same argument. I don't think it's fair that we have to arbitrate for them and they're not paying dues. And so we put in an amendment that said they don't have to. It's really not about that.
Well,
it's about the power.
Well, that's why
we should have left it in there.
I don't disagree with you. The argument I made in the Senate when this came up was there's circular reasoning here. Is they say, yes, you know, this isn't fair to represent them but not get paid. So you pull that restriction out and they say, well, we can't do this because there's going to be chaos because there's not an exclusive bargain. So, you know,
You can't have it both ways.
You can't have it both ways. You just can't win. You can't do anything.
But they would negotiate with their employer. And that was their argument. They said, well, if you have 100 people, you think they're going to negotiate with their employer? That's up to them. If they don't want to join a union.
And chances are the employer would just go, we're going to give you, we're going to
give you what the
same
union.
wage.
Exactly.
Right. So yeah, the decision to take it out or not is more protected. But I think a lot of people in the House said, okay, I'm going to support this now because you've addressed their concerns. But then, so in my mind, you kind of called the bluff, put the amendment in, and then once that was in, there was a bigger outcry against the amendment.
Without the amendment, it won't be veto-proof. So
That's what I'm worried about.
So you're going to, in effect, kill it.
We'll get that. I've made that point. I'm not sure that's true, but I know some people have said they won't support it without the amendment. So, who knows? All right,
All right. Does anybody else have questions or comments or anything? Certainly not rushing Jim out of here.
I guess I'm still finishing dinner.
Yeah.
I want to hear the sheriff, so.
2 nights in a row I had him speak and his dinner went cold.
chicken rush, we know where the sheriff is.